Alright guys, so today I'm going to show you how I made this. Cool. And I made that out of this, right? So I just started with a chord progression. Now I made this chord progression in Captain Plugins. I'm going to do a second part to this video where I go through how I made this plugin, or sorry, how I made this chord progression, and sort of the music theory and stuff behind it. You don't need Captain Plugins for it to be a useful video for you. But in this video, the techniques I'm going to show you will really apply for any chord progression you have to make something awesome out of it. And I've got a rack for you that will help you do this. So let's just dive right in. So there's a few components, right? This sounds like this. Right, and then I also made a different version, right? So a kind of other side. Right, and I was able to quickly make another progression out of that using the same automation lanes that I'm going to show you in a second. Cool. So it's really powerful. Obviously, you know, the MIDI turns out great if you take care and time with it, right? It's not going to become awesome immediately. This has the automation in it, so just look at the MIDI notes. It's the same, but when we play it, I've since changed all the automation in here, so it's not going to sound exactly the same, but you can see kind of what's going on. So we're breaking this down into the fundamentals of music theory. Now you should be able to do this in any DAW. Like all DAWs should have MIDI processing stuff. They all have like arpeggiators and stuff like that. So figure out how to do it in your DAW. But all we're doing is we're taking these fundamental things that are the building blocks of melody and harmony and such, and then we are applying these tools to manipulate them to our advantage, right? So what we've started with, and this is what I'll cover in the next video, is what notes to even have in the first place. Right, but starting with the fact that you already have these chords and you have these bed of notes to choose from and to deviate from, right? You don't always have to use the notes in the chord, but it gives you an opportunity as a framework to move away from, right? Just like a chord rhythm will give you a rhythm to syncopate against, right? So what we're doing is we're jumping from going up to doing this chord trigger. So if you watch this right, so that's all that's happening, and you know, right, so every time it's down, it's doing these chord triggers. Now the reason I did the up on the other one is I wanted this walking bass line kind of thing, right? So it's going to go up from the bottom, and so if you look at how the notes actually turn out, right, this whole bass line on the bottom happens from being in this up position. Now the other thing that's happening while this is doing up is, see this punch-in? These are mapped here, which is then mapped onto this ARP knob, really. So as this moves back and forth, these are turning on and off. So this is dropping it down an octave and adding another octave on top. We can drop it down 2, which is how I usually do. Right, so you get a little bit more bassy. Right, we could even add more octaves on top of it, and we can adjust the velocities. Right, so there's a lot of ways that you can sort of manipulate this on the fly. Right, so this is not always like part of this rack, but I'm going to leave it in here for you, and I'm going to have it default turned off as just a reminder to punch in stuff. But right now this is affecting when there's non-chords, and you just got to be careful with when this is turned on or not, because I wouldn't necessarily want this on for everything. So let's move on. right? So we've got this bed of notes that we start with. I'll cover that in the next video, but from here we're changing different patterns through these notes. So that's this, right? That's step one in the chain. The next thing we go to is this fine drive, which is basically adjusting the articulations and stuff, right? So I can accent stuff and I can swell and whatnot, but it's just increasing or decreasing the velocity. Now, the reason I use this, right, is because generally you have a little bit of a groove or something in the notes that you have. Sometimes it's straight flat, and this is fine too. But if you just sort of skew things, you can retain the initial groove. But this is clearly automated. Right, so I changed this from before. I had like a more nuanced pattern that was in here, but I've since lost it in this save thing. I'm not going to bring it back up. But you basically draw in what you want. This is a little bit less responsive. This is a little bit more responsive. This I'm drawing in phrasing, so it's like swelling louder. Right, so you can see this guy, this happens later in the chain, but this is a more aggressive curve. And then you could crank both of them up, obviously. These kind of give you two lanes of control, because it's nice to do like the accents and stuff in one lane, and then the crescendos and the decrescendos that happen during the course of the phrase with another one. So depending on how extreme you want those swells, you might pick one or another. But it's nice to have the resolution of this fine knob, right? There's not a lot of difference between the top and bottom on here. It only goes from -25 to +25. So it just gives you like a little bit easier control, so you're not like messing with pixels at a time, right? In between here, we have this random number generator, right? So I just wanted to add an ability to add some randomness to the velocity, right? And then you can still, after the fact, you can skew that, just FYI. So going back, so we're working on this velocity phrasing, or the loudness, which notes are loud, which notes are quiet. So we've got the patterns, we've got these speed of these notes, like when they happen. This is just straight eighths throughout. The only time it's not a straight eighth is this note right here, and that's just an effect, right? I like how it just rolls and rolls and rolls, and then you get this one long note. Right, and it's just this nice held note. So that's basically what it's going for here. But you could just as easily draw in stuff here and change the speed, right, and make a whole different pattern. Right, and it's good to be more deliberate about it. The last element, so we've got the rhythm, which is this rate knob, right? We've got the accents and the non-accents, which are these knobs, and then you've got this note length, which is for how long these notes are held out. So that's the fundamental elements of crafting melody and harmony and stuff. Is you've got what notes out that you're using, you've got how loud they are, you've got when they happen, and how long they're held, right? And it's a lot easier actually to craft it with these automation lanes than it is to do it all at once when you're starting from a block chord, right? So we're starting from these big chords. We're not just trying to draw it in like one at a time like melodies. We're trying to craft stuff that is a structural result of our chord progressions and such, right? So it's going to have a consistency, like a melodic and a structural consistency with our chord progressions, right? And like the rhythms and stuff. So it's kind of a better system for creating a lot of stuff. But we're basically have all the core elements that you need to manipulate right at our fingertips. And the nice thing is you can see these, right? So you can just draw in how you want it to be. And Live 10, the new beta, it's so good because you can like now skew these guys. So say I want this down more and I want it more downward sloping on average. So I could grab this corner up here and then pull this down. So I could make it like tilt down more, or I could make this section now go back up, right? And so Right, so it's really fun. And it's obviously like faster than trying to grab those notes, adjust the length and stuff like that. And then you can sort of see quickly like how your phrase is evolving. And then you can copy this automation lane over to other notes and stuff, right? Or it's actually easier if you say I made a copy of this clip. What would be easier is actually if I took these notes from my other section, instead of trying to copy over all the automation, I can just copy these notes, right? Get rid of this bullshit. Put this in here and then. Right, so when all, like, choosing which notes when they stab, like, all the accents and the phrasings and the swells, you can get consistency in the structure, right? Um, Using these tools as opposed to trying to do it a note at a time, basically, right? Now, it's not just that, right? I've been doing this chord stab stuff, but it's just as fine to draw random stuff in there, right? You can just draw random stuff in here. That's actually really pretty, so I'm going to keep that, right? So it really is that simple, but it starts with having a really good chord progression, ideally, right? And um, tweaking it and really sculpting it so it turns out really nice. You'll get like mediocre results usually if you just draw random stuff in, but sometimes you get like awesome things to happen. So this also creates a lot of happy accidents along the way. Um, just one couple last bits on the functionality of this. This happens at the end of the chain, right? I mean, the note length happens at the end. This is the last velocity, and this is a velocity override. So it will just turn the velocity to whatever number this is. So this would be 0, So you can like literally control the velocity directly this way instead of the drive, which is shifting it relatively. So you could like, I'm going to give this rack to you guys, so check the description for that. You don't need this. I actually did the original one without this rack, and I'm like, I'm going to build this rack for them. I can make it better. So enjoy it. I got to make a Live 9 version, so if there's not a link there, I'm probably just going to post this. This is like the newest beta, basically. So if you're in Live 10 or if it's Future World now and you're in like Live 11 or whatever, it'll work for you. I'll probably make a Live 9 one for y'all when I get a minute. I'm actually going to the producer dojo, so Il Gates, if you don't know him, he's an amazing producer, but he's also one of the best music educators in the world, and he runs the producer dojo, which I am a member of. I'm going to train there personally with him for a week starting tomorrow, which will probably be today by the time I put this video up. So can't even explain how excited I'm about that. That's going to be crazy, 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 crazy. So stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll try and do a video from while I'm out there. But yeah, download this rack, make some MIDI out of it, start with chord progressions, any chord progressions, and make the awesomest stuff ever. Send it to me. I would love it if you guys sent me the MIDI that you make with this. You can also send me the audio that is a result of the MIDI. That would be really great too. But I can put it into a pack and maybe give everybody the MIDI that everyone submits. And so we've got like this badass custom MIDI pack that I can give away to everybody. And it'll be like a crowdsourced thing for y'all. So those sorts of things, but yeah, send it in, and thanks so much for everything. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I give a lot of stuff away. I've got so much more to teach you. Yeah, even just part 2 of this, we're going to cover the music theory and how I even came up with this chord progression in the first place. It's like filled with all these diminished chords and like these 7 and 9 chords and stuff. Like it's, there's like jazz theory and stuff that went into this. But also a lot of it's by ear. And so I'm going to talk about some of the tools that I use to generate this and some of the music theory fundamentals that I use to structure this, right? And so that'll be a good video too. So stay tuned for that one. It might not come out for like a week though, because I'm going to be at the producer dojo. But you know, until then, peace. Let's play the song on the way out.